It's Monday, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly, I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Once again, happy Monday, happy June, and happy birthday to Real Talk, celebrating 6 years today here on the air on the Jersey First Television Network. And folks, who would have thought it on June 1st, 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, when we're home, we can't leave our homes. We don't know what's going on. Many of us are scared. We're worried for family members. Whatever the case may be, I took a gamble on June 1st, 2020 to start Real Talk, and it's been a success ever since. And many awards later, again, folks, and the traffic will tell you how good Real Talk continues to be every single week here on the Jersey First Television Network. More on the 6th birthday of Real Talk later on in the program. You definitely want to stick around. As always, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X. Brand new X page, of course, folks. Yes, I got hacked a few weeks ago, and I had to make it a point to create a new page, get new followers, but still getting good traffic. So I appreciate the follows and retweet whenever you can on the new X page, Uribe Media on X. Of course, make sure you subscribe to Jersey First on YouTube. All of our great content is brought to you, again, by the Jersey First Television Network. It takes 5 seconds, folks. Like, comment, and share all the great programming we bring you every single week here on Jersey First TV. And, of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First, favorite it, and, of course, you'll be notified of all the great content we bring you every single week here on Jersey First TV. Folks, a jam-packed show as always, as you know. And, of course, what we do better than anybody here in independent media in New Jersey, folks. We're always educating and advocating for our residents here in the great state of New Jersey, folks. It's always Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk every Monday. Check your local listings for start times, of course. And also, you can check out brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap, which has returned to Jersey First TV. Of course, you can check that out on the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, I say it all the time. It's going to be a jam-packed final thoughts because we're going to start off with, once again, wonderful traffic for the month of May. Over 77,000 views, all organic, folks, because I don't boost anything. I'm not vaccinated. I don't need any boosters for anything. We're doing great stuff here on Jersey First TV. Again, as we continue month after month, year after year, being informative, being educational, and most importantly, being entertaining for all of you every single Monday night. So special thank you to everybody later as we talk about traffic for May of 2026. Folks, as you know, I love to make fun of a lot of the useless people here in New Jersey, whether it's in higher education, whether it's in media, activism, you name it. You can see the collage behind me, folks. There's no shortage of useless government employees and just downright garbage journalists and useless elected officials and, the types in higher education. But what we saw last Monday, folks, on Memorial Day, at Delaney Hall in Newark. And a special thank you to the Hudson County Chronicles for publishing my op-ed. I'm going to tell you the truth about what happened last Monday on Memorial Day, when we should be honoring dead soldiers and when many elected officials are going there to virtue signal and for photo ops. It seems like dead soldiers and the memory of what they gave for this country takes a back seat to coddling illegals for many in the Democrat Party. I'm going to talk more about that during Final Thoughts. You definitely want to miss out on that. And, of course, leading the charge about virtue signaling for illegals in New Jersey, of course, it's Uncle Dave, Slim over here in Jersey City, actually left his house to do some work. Que milagro. Porque es un huevón. Eso no sirve para nada. Y eso no trabaja. But it's a miracle he went to Delaney Hall there last week. So, interesting little take about Uncle Dave and his adventures there. And also, folks, when we talk about garbage journalism, we talk about Charles Style with NorthJersey.com. And his latest op-ed defending Andy Kim is just another example, folks, about why you can't trust the establishment media here in New Jersey. So more on that later during Final Thoughts. And folks, also a special comment, because June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And folks, we all learned about it the hard way last week when many of us who've worked in nightlife, who have frequented nightlife, saw the passing of our dear friend DQ down the Jersey Shore. And in a time when, we've always been raised as men to be tough and suck it up and don't show your emotions. Folks, we're human. And sometimes it's too much for too many people. My hearts and thoughts go out to the family of David Quisenberg, who was not just a great bartender, but a great human And we honor his memory later during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's important, folks. Get help. Talk to someone. Your life matters. As we learn the same of New Jersey Devils icon and New Jersey Devils Hall of Famer Claude Lemieux, who also passed this week by taking his own life as well. Folks, there's an epidemic when it comes to men's mental health, and we're going to talk about that and the importance about going to talk to someone, whether it's family, friends, a professional. Your life matters. Talk to someone if you're feeling that low. You should never have to battle this alone. More on that later during a special comment. And also, folks, obviously a privilege to meet Hollywood icon Chaz Palminteri last week in West New York. A little bit more about why, you know what? Sometimes people say, don't meet your heroes. No, I'm glad I did. We'll talk about more on that later in the broadcast. Folks, it is, again, happy 6th birthday to Real Talk here on the Jersey First Television Network. 6 years later, I'm still raising hell, having conversations that matter and that actually gets engagement. Not Mickey Mouse traffic with Mickey Mouse journalists. No, folks, there's nothing Mickey Mouse here. We'll continue raising hell, having conversations that matter with people that matter. And it is election season, and I talk to everybody. Folks, I don't live in a bubble. I don't live in an echo chamber. I talk to Republicans. I talk to Democrats. I talk to conservatives. I talk to liberals. I talk to progressives. I even talk to people that are affiliated or kind of walk the line with Green Party ideals, or maybe they don't, or maybe they're looking to rebrand themselves. Well, let's do that today, since it is election season. And joining me here this evening is New Jersey's 5th Congressional District candidate, Adam Rueda, joins us live right now on Real Talk. Adam, welcome.
Thank you, sir, for that strong introduction. I appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate that. And folks, again, if you're not familiar with New Jersey's 5th Congressional District, it's one of the larger ones in New Jersey here. It is broken down between 3 counties, Bergen County, Passaic County, and Sussex County. Now, in Sussex County, it contains 14 municipalities, which include Andover, Branchville, Frankfort, Franklin, Hamburg, Hampton, Hardyston, Lafayette, Montague, Newton, Sandyston, Sussex, Vernon, and Wantagh Township. Now, in Passaic County, it includes Bloomingdale, Ringwood, Wanacue, and West Milford. And certainly the biggest part of the district is comprised in Bergen County with 47 municipalities. So, folks, get a grip here and have a seat. Allendale, Alpine, Bergenfield, Bogota, Closter, Cresskill, Demarest, Dumont, Emerson, Inglewood, Inglewood Cliffs, Fairlawn, Fort Lee, Glenrock, Hackensack, Harrington Park, Haworth, Hillsdale, Hohokus, Leonia, Mahwah, parts of Maywood, also Midland Park, Montvale, New Milford, Northville, Norwood, Otapan, Oradell, Palisades Park, Paramus, Park Ridge, Ramsey, Richfield Park, Ridgewood, River Edge, Rivervale, Rockley, Saddle River, Teaneck, Tenafly, Upper Saddle River, Waldwick, Washington Township, Westwood, Woodcliff Lake, and Wyckoff. I did that all in one breath. All right, good stuff. A lot of towns in the 5th Congressional District. So, Adam, welcome. I appreciate you want to come on the program. As you know, I talk to everybody during the election season because I like to talk to candidates and get to know what they stand for. So clearly, and we talked about it briefly today over text, and my overstep today was thinking you're running under the sort of the traditional Green Party platform. As I've interviewed Green Party candidates early this year, I'm not sure if you remember, in 2024, I actually was a moderator and host of a Green Party town hall down at the College of New Jersey during 2024. But you are identifying as sort of a new version of what the Green Party is. So before you tell us why you're running in the 5th Congressional District, I take it you're not happy with your representative right now. But before we get to that, what exactly is this new wave or this brand of Green Party politics that you subscribe to?
Yeah, so I'm trying to start a new political party. It's called Green Party 2.0. Technically, my candidacy for New Jersey 5, running as an independent, but I'm trying to start a new political party in this country. It's called Green Party 2.0. I'm of the belief that we need a new voting bloc in Congress to kind of break the gridlock and turn the page to a new chapter of compromise and negotiation in Congress. So that new voting bloc is called Green Party 2.0. I'm officially running as an independent, New Jersey 5. Right now, we have a very uncompetitive race, as both the Democratic primary and the Republican primary are like uncompetitive, uncontested. No one's going against Josh in Democratic, and no one's against Sean Keirain, who has never been in politics before on the Republican side. So I just feel like we need to stoke the fires and have an election in NJ5. I feel like no one is paying attention to the midterm and the race, while other districts like NJ11, NJ12, and NJ7 get more attention from media and from every angle.
Well, let's jump into that. Let's jump into your platform before we sort of dissect right now, obviously. And folks, just a special programming note, coming up on Monday, June 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern time, I will have the incumbent U.S. Representative Josh Gottheimer will be on the program live on Monday night, June the 15th. So you want to circle that on your calendars possibly. And I'm sure I'll have plenty of questions for him during that time. So again, get it ready, send some emails in. If you have questions for the incumbent, I'm happy to talk about that on the air. Looking at your key issues here, the homework I did on you, you write on your campaign page, quote, "I pledge to never own stocks or crypto while serving in office. We must work to severely limit corporate and international interest impact on our congressional processes and our greater democracy. We must work to be fully transparent about the lobbying and pay-to-play democracy we have created here in 2026. We must work to end insider trading and endless personal profiteering in Congress." Listen, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we've seen members, specifically in the Democrat Party in the House for decades, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and others, get rich while in office because of insider trading, obviously other profiteering. But when we think about that, Adam, I mean, ultimately, I mean, again, it's great to read that on a platform, and I can commend you for that. And you're right. I mean, I'd like to have it eliminated for everybody. I don't think Republicans or Democrats should benefit whatsoever from their positions in whether it be in the Senate or in the House of Representatives and insider trading. We all know how destructive it could be. But realistically, what do you think, if you were elected to the House of Representatives in the 5th Congressional District, what's a realistic methodology when it comes to either introducing a bill or the language of what you would introduce about really and ultimately doing away with this?
Yeah, so it's an interesting point, and I do agree that there's a lot of loopholes and ways that can, if a congressman does want to invest in stocks or equities, there's a lot of loopholes where you can leverage family members or do it through friends or colleagues or business partners. So as you mentioned, I took the pledge personally to not own stocks or crypto. So I think maybe as an electorate and as voting civilians, we can start demanding that much better from our candidates. So even if it's not able to be passed as a law or as a bill through Congress, because it's very unlikely, because the people in Congress don't want to hurt their own prospects of profiteering. And that's just the reality. And the vast majority of Congress is not going to vote for something that, dims their prospects in any way. And the vast majority of Congress is profiting in this way off of insider trading. So just as the same as if you're trading stocks in private equity on Wall Street, there's all guidelines and very serious rules that are to be followed if you are come in contact with insider information and whether you can interact with that security, going forward after you've had privileged information. So I feel like we can get much more in line in terms of that aspect. Holding our congressmen, which is a very powerful position. They have a lot of other things to worry about, holding them to that minimum of Wall Street private equity regulation, but also demanding that from candidates that, you can have a candidate that commits to that on their own, that they're not going to own stocks or crypto. So they won't have that bias and that personal slice to the puzzle. That's going to always be a bias in terms of what they write or how they vote. So, yeah, I think that twofold answer on that one.
Okay, fair enough. Again, but I think it's easier said than done because and I'm not rationalizing or trying to justify it, but it really is unfortunate. I mean, big money has really become an integral part of our political process. Both parties are ultimately guilty of it. I think
it's not that way. I mean, you're supposed to be a public servant as a congressman.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right.
But it's not supposed to be get rich quick.
No, you're absolutely right. Listen, I think you're there to perform a public service, to get rich. I think that's the complete antithesis, I would argue, about public service. You're not there to enriching yourself. I mean, and we have seen people, I think, from both parties, I think, that working in Congress for decades, right? Yeah. Now I'm just curious, are you in favor of term limits for House and Senate people?
Yeah, I think we would have to start on a pretty lengthy term limit, considering there are none now. I think somewhere around 24 years would be great. It's about like a third of your life in service. It's a nice multiple of 2, 4, or 6. So I think like 24 years would be great to start. Considering right now we have unlimited congressional terms, and people are there literally. You saw this year and recently, people are there till their dying day. So I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed. We need to get more young people with the best years of their life ahead of them in leadership positions and in Congress specifically. It's big part of my messaging as well. But yeah, I think we should definitely start with congressional terms of 24 years.
That's fair point, folks. It's 6:30 on the dot here on the East Coast. If you're just joining us live, it takes 5 seconds to do and show support for the program. Like, comment, and share tonight's episode here on Real Talk on the 1st of June in 2026, the 6th birthday of Real Talk, folks. So happy birthday to Real Talk here on Jersey First TV. My guest tonight is New Jersey's 5th Congressional District candidate, Adam Rueda. Join us live here on Real Talk. Folks, drop a comment or a question there in the comment section. And again, like, comment, and share. It really helps the show grow and show your support for fearless, independent journalism, which you can rely on here, always with Real Talk. Adam, you also mentioned in your platform as well, I'm just sort of reading it from my notes here, you talk about the importance of universal human rights, and there's a lot here, so we'll unpackage it in a minute. But you wrote, we have egregious human rights violations that have occurred and are still happening now in Gaza, the West Bank, and Greater Palestine. Basic human rights and due process are being openly disregarded by ICE, especially within ICE detention centers. Innocent people are dying at the hands of the United States. A main priority of mine is addressing these urgent issues so that the U.S. can be more in line with the United Nations and other advanced democracies in Europe and throughout the world. We need to get back to upholding the dignity of all human beings as a country. So a lot to unpackage there. So let me, because I've talked to congressional candidates during this cycle from both parties, everywhere, Republicans, Democrats, Green Party candidates down south and everything. And, it seems like vilifying ICE is kind of like the popular thing to do during this election season, during this midterm cycle. And let me just give a little bit of a civics lesson. You're a smart guy, so this is not news to you. But for our audience, maybe is not aware, folks, again, ICE is Immigration Customs Enforcement. Now, they're an agency under the auspices of the Department of Homeland Security. As you all remember, after, as we'll be unfortunately honoring 25 years later now, the attacks at the World Trade Center at the Pentagon by Islamic extremists back on September 11, 2001. And in 2003, Congress passed what was known as the Department of Homeland Security Act, which thus reorganized federal agencies now into what is known as the Department of Homeland Security. Certainly before INS was its own entity, the Immigration Naturalization Service. Now that got reorganized into what we know today as ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, which of course, one of its responsibilities is to enforce federal immigration law, to also oversee prosecutions when it comes to human trafficking and other federal crimes. Now, Adam, as I've talked to other candidates and I've talked to journalists and activists on this show, it's cute to just say abolish ICE. And I'm not saying you're guilty of this, but what I'm saying is it's cute to put all these little cute hashtags, right? We heard about abolish the police and we heard about abolish ICE. And that's just not realistic right now, as it would take Congress to literally pass legislation to overhaul the Department of Homeland Security, which now, again, to do away with ICE doesn't seem realistic or feasible. You need a federal agency to oversee federal immigration law. And I don't want to get into the semantics of whether it's a civil violation or a criminal one. If you're here illegally, Adam, you're here illegally. There has to be a mechanism to oversee federal immigration law. Now, we can argue about what ICE does. Listen, I'm the first one to tell you, should they have more than 47 days of training? Of course. Nobody who's intellectually honest would argue that. Should they have body cams? Absolutely. I worked in criminal justice and law enforcement for over 10 years. I mean, I'm intellectually honest to say, I don't see anything wrong with body cams. Cool. Let's have some accountability. Let's revisit maybe tactics and training. No question. But Adam, what we're seeing, on a national level, okay, what we've seen since 2003, we've seen different presidents, both Republicans and Democrats in different Congresses, use DHS to enforce federal immigration law. And for all the hoopla about the 45th and 47th president and about the amount of deportations occurring under his administrations, I mean, the 44th president deported more people than anybody in American history. And this agency has been used to remove illegals in this country. Now, are there some unfortunate incidents that happen? Of course. We see it in every administration. Do we see families being separated? Absolutely. Have we seen kids in cages and barbed wire fences? Absolutely. We saw them during the 44th president's 8 years. We've seen them during others. But realistically, Adam, I'm not saying you're guilty of this, but the premise of abolish ICE, that's not going to happen. Like, there has to be a mechanism to enforce federal immigration laws. So what say you about what mechanism do you think is better?
I agree with you that we of course need this mechanism to enforce, illegal immigration, at least customs and enforce customs and border, of course. But I think that ICE, being the organization that carries through that process, is something that is played out and is something that has been corrupted and poisoned. And it's a lot to do with, you mentioned the training and the culture of kind of racial profiling that has been installed already in this organization. So same way as if a public company were to go bankrupt or go totally corrupt and their leadership was embezzling all kinds of funds, you wouldn't say it's time to revitalize this organization or get it back on track. You would say it's time to scrap it and build anew. And I think that's what's kind of happened with ICE. ICE has been taken up to a new level in my mind, like you mentioned, all those other examples with prior presidents. But just in my experience, and I can only speak for my district here in New Jersey 5, I'm 28, going to be 29. I just actually turned 29 on May 30th.
That's right. Happy belated birthday. I know I'm May 17th. You're a Gemini. We just missed each other being a Taurus, but happy belated birthday to you. So.
Happy birthday to you as well. Thanks so much. But yeah, so just in my life and growing up as a resident of New Jersey, I've seen the ICE presence increase, exponentially during this administration. I've seen, the construction and development of these for-profit centers that I've never seen before. So just from eyes on the ground and, blurring out all the media and all the noise, it has been that much of an overstep with ICE, I think, this most recent administration, and people have died in these facilities. People are, getting assaulted or getting denied medical care in these facilities. So the conditions are not well. And that's really, what we're seeing at Delaney Hall recently, and leading up to today, the protests from those protesters who are in response. They're going there in response to a hunger strike and a work strike that's occurring within the camp. So I think that that's important for people to understand. People are like, oh, why are they there? Why are they tangling with ICE? I'm for you. And I think that there's a lot of more diplomatic ways that we can handle things, like running for Congress and running for elected office. But at the same point, people are suffering there physically in that facility. So I think that justifies some of the activism we've been seeing.
Adam, to be fair, I mean, wouldn't it be easier if New Jersey wasn't a sanctuary state like New York and Illinois and California? Like, blue states are perpetuating this too. I mean, to be fair, I mean, I laugh at the governor today or over the weekend talking about like, well, I felt the need to it's like she's patting herself on the back for, instructing the state police to participate and help ICE agents. It's a problem you caused to begin with. Like, you're not giving support from the onset. Like, the idea that we're seeing and again, it was just confirmed today, we're seeing the majority of arrests over the past week have been all out of town people, Antifa people, protesters from other states. I mean, it's been a very small percentage of people that live in New Jersey that are protesting. But but get back to the premise. I mean, in a sanctuary state, though, Adam, when governors, we had Phil Murphy for 8 years declare New Jersey a sanctuary state, and now obviously Governor Sherrill has done the same thing and perpetuating it more by signing the Immigrant Trust Directive. When you're not allowing federal law enforcement to go into jails and remove illegals because of you're trying to push this sanctuary state policy. I mean, you could easily avoid this by just not invoking these sort of policies. I mean, again, I don't have the data in front of me, but you don't see this in red states, man. Like, you don't see this in Florida. You don't see this in Tennessee. You don't see this in Texas and Kentucky. Like, federal law enforcement can go into jails and remove the illegals they have to remove, that especially the dangerous ones. I mean, this is all avoidable, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it is avoidable. I think this is horrible that it has to be so politicized and made into such a red blue issue and
Okay.
an issue that the public has, I think, been whipped into such a fervor over for years. For years, this is nothing new, and
Sure.
it's unfortunate that the rule. I think that the options that we've been presented as elected as an electorate as civilians with votes, I think have been crummy options, to be honest,
Okay.
and it's just a result. I think that a lot of the ruling class and the powers that be want to sow unrest, and they want to pit a us versus them narrative and force the common man to kind of point at their neighbor as the problem. And I think that that's all by design, and that's not really the truth.
Let me ask you this, because again, I think there's an optic out there that exists, and whether it's, and again, I talk about them all the time, but whether it's institutions like academia, whether it's establishment media, I mean, there seems to be this concerted effort, Adam. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, educate me on this. There seems to be this concerted effort by one political party, and I know you're not part of that political party, but a certain ideology that feels it almost justified to deputize regular citizens to go in front of these detention centers or to be out on the street and be physically provocative with law enforcement. Like, listen, I mean, I'm an old man compared to you, but I just remember at a young age, man, like getting in the face of police and thinking that you're empowered and thinking that screaming at law enforcement in any capacity, like, our moms used to, well, my mom used to say, eso no trae buen resultado. Like, that's just not going to bring a good result. So it just seems like one side of the political aisle is deputizing people and to be like, you know what? You, going up to law enforcement, getting in their face, screaming at them, in many instances, threatening them to kill to dox agents, to dox law enforcement. I mean, Adam, let's try to meet in the middle here. I mean, there seems to be this premise that, you can disagree with what ICE agents do in front of a detention center, but banging on cars, preventing an entry, preventing an exit, getting in the face of federal law enforcement and thinking that that's either cool or you're doing a public service, Adam, that's just not true.
Yeah, I understand your point. I think that people really feel unrepresented at a certain level, and they really
Okay.
feel like their voice is not being heard. Across a lot of the trauma and tragedies that we see in this country, a lot of times it's someone that I think is taking out in anger or trying to get a message across, and it's someone that is truly feels unheard. And I think there's a lot more of that in this country as our representatives and elected officials, are just not speaking out on the behalf of the working class or the everyday person, as much as they're speaking out for their corporate or foreign interests. So I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of people that feel like they need to take matters into their own hands. Um, now more than ever. And I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do, but people need outlets. People are passionate about these very serious issues, happening right in their state, right in their hometown. It's hard to fault people, for having that kind of passion and that kind of activism, that kind of energy. And I think it just needs to be directed in the right place. And we have to be super cognizant that that energy does exist. And there are people willing to, stand up for human rights, regardless the cost.
Now, I know you've taken exception with your representative right now in the 5th Congressional District, whether it's been his votes on funding, the Department of Homeland Security, voting yes on the Laken Riley Act, and other dynamics as well when it comes to how to approach illegal immigration. Obviously, I've looked at your socials. I know you've taken exception with the current incumbent when it comes to his positions. And he's a Jewish American. He's going to certainly side with Israel, and he has gone on network television, whether it be Fox, whether it be CNN, MS Now, and talked about far left voices within his party or within progressive circles or liberal circles or whatever. Because when I look at the incumbent Josh Gottheimer, I don't think of him as a far left woke Democrat. I mean, yes, he was walking there with a congressional delegation yesterday, walking near Delaney Hall in Newark. But by and large, I mean, Josh Gottheimer tends to be sort of a center left Democrat. I always laugh. I'm a conservative, and I always laugh when I hear people that are either progressives or liberals talk about like, well, Josh Gottheimer is just a Republican. I'm like, there's nothing Republican about the incumbent. Like, I'm a conservative. Like, there's nothing Republican about the incumbent. He's a Democrat. He's a center-left Democrat. He certainly has his allegiances to the country of Israel, right? And I think he has been very vocal about, far left voices, such as, for example, podcasters like Hassan Piker, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, and others that have vilified Israel right now with what's going on in the Middle East, with what's going on in Gaza, with what's going on in the West Bank. Now, you've been very vocal about calling out the incumbent, but specifically, what bothers you about the incumbent when it comes to his defense of Israel and certainly how you view what's going on in the West Bank?
Well, I just want to touch on a point you mentioned, how he's not actually a Republican, but he does vote with Republicans actually more than the Democratic Party voting bloc. And, he sides with them in a lot of important issues. So in terms of his voting record, he does vote red and lean towards big business quite a bit, especially on foreign policy, as we'll go more into. But, even on other aspects like FISA warrantless surveillance, or regarding impeaching Trump for any kind of war power violations. He's always started siding with Republicans in that sense. So in that sense, like on paper, he literally can be.
Well, hold on. I'll let you finish, but hold on a second. So, I mean, I can't. I don't. My producer says he can't really fact check it right now live. But are you saying that during the first Trump term, when there were impeachments of the president, I don't. Again, I'm not trying to be combative here, but I don't recall the incumbent voting not to impeach the president. I think many Democrats in New Jersey specifically, I think, were lockstep in wanting to impeach the president. So I find that claim a little, not dubious, but I find it a little irregular because I'm like, I have to fact check it to be sure. But offhand, no, I mean, aside from voting for the Lincoln Rally Act, which I think makes sense, again, my opinion, but other than that, though, when it comes to benefiting corporations. I mean, again, just 8 months ago, it was in the Globe today. 8 months ago, Representative Gottheimer and U.S. Senator Andy Kim were ecstatic at the grand opening of a Samsung corporate office in New Jersey. But because, let's be honest, I mean, Democrats have run New Jersey for over 25 years. Samsung is not going to be leaving New Jersey because of just an awful tax climate here. So I don't know exactly when you're saying that he tends to maybe vote or lean Republican. I've looked at his voting record. I can't find a thing. Now, again, when he ran for governor last year, he was probably the more moderate of all the Democrats there. Everybody else was like progressive, if not outright crazy woke, depending on the candidates. I don't recall and I'm going to ask him about it in 2 weeks. But again, man, I don't recall the representative voting anywhere in the world of Fernando Uribe, let's just say. I don't recall that. So if you give me some examples, I'd appreciate it, because I think the audience would benefit from it.
No problem. The impeachment vote I was referring to was the most recent vote when Iran was attacked, and it was the start of the Iran war, whether we were going to impeach Trump and also whether we were going to curtail Trump's war powers and return more of the war powers to the chambers of Congress. So, Gottheimer voted against curtailing Trump's war powers and against impeaching Trump, very recently at the start of the Iran war. So not in the first term.
Okay, again, I just want to be sure. Okay, now again, he's been very adamant on national television and obviously the national cable news networks, talking about the dangers of Iran, and we all know that again, man, long before we've ever been born, either you or I mean, since 1979, Iran has been a hostile nation to the United States and really any Western democracy for over 40 years. I mean, we're talking about almost 50 years here, and they have funded terrorism around the world. They have been hostile to the United States. They have been, hostile to Israel, our only ally, our only democracy in the Middle East. And I know that you've been kind of adamant, like, hey, maybe there's a distinction with, like, we may not like the government's tactics in Israel. That doesn't mean we hate Israelis. That doesn't mean we hate Jewish people. So I understand that there's that debate now, right? There's that discussion about, well, two things can be separate. I get that, but I think that I'm not going to speak for him, but I think just looking at his narratives when he talks to cable news, I mean, he's just concerned about Iran growing in power in the region and continuing their hostility against the United States. It's not like Iran's ever been an ally of the United States, and they've been hostile. They've killed Americans. They funded terrorism that has killed Americans. So, I mean, is the representative off base to not be concerned about an Iran that's nuclear or, again, terroristic?
No, I mean, there are definitely enemies in Iran, enemies of the United States, but I don't think that we should be tweeting as elected officials, as Gottheimer has, that we need to destroy or crush, entire countries of 90 million people. I think that that is too broad of a statement and too broad of a swipe to take at an entire country. I think that the entire reason that we got involved with Iran was to free the civilians from this oppressive regime, right, and from this Ayatollah and from this regime that was killing and torturing civilians. That's why we got involved in Iran, right? That was the justification. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right. But again, but on top of that, and not to compile the problem worse, but I mean, again, listen, I'm not a fan of regime change. I had to live 27 years ago with basically the falsehoods of going into Iraq and the trillions of dollars we wasted. Unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of American lives either killed or wounded permanently because of falsehoods to go into Iraq. I get it. The 45th and the 47th president was reelected on the premise of no more endless wars, no more conflicts. I get all that.
Yes,
But
sir.
no, and I understand that premise, and that was one of the reasons I mean, that's one of the reasons I voted for the man 3 times. But when we look at it now, again, I think it's maybe, let's see if we can meet in the middle on this. I think weakening Iran, I think, benefits a lot of people in the region, benefits Western allies. I'm not a fan of NATO. I think there are a lot of people with their handouts and don't put their fair share into funding NATO. But I think a weakened and destabilized regime in Iran, I would argue, man, is probably a good for democracy if we're really talking about democracy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the conflict in Iran in a microscope, it wouldn't be first on my list of gripes, of policy with Representative Gottheimer. But I think when you zoom out just a bit and consider what is happening in Palestine, like you mentioned, that I've written, and also now in southern Lebanon, I think like the pattern and the progress and the plan of Greater Israel becomes much more clear, and you realize that this isn't just about Iran, but this has started years ago, and it's probably going to be going for years longer. So it's necessary for me, I think, to kind of zoom out from just looking at this like any other conflict, like whether it was in Iran or in Iraq or in Afghanistan, and kind of look at what's also happening concurrently with, I think, the extermination of peoples and a culture in Palestine, and now the egregious plowing over borders in southern Lebanon. So I think looking at it as a whole is super helpful to understanding the situation in Iran.
Now, you've been a staunch defender of well, at least raising awareness about what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank. And obviously, on your socials, you're not shy about posting certain flags. And I know, obviously, on social media earlier today, I know you were getting into it with one of my regular viewers on the program.
Always good, healthy dialogue. I'm
Well,
trying to
sure, but
be like a super accessible person, just replies to comments, active inboxes or DM. So that's gonna be
sure.
my goal.
Well, again, I think it's fair to say that you're not surprised about when you get some scorn or backlash or vitriol when it comes to defending Palestine, and certainly when we have advocates, whether it be in higher education, whether it be sometimes in the halls of Congress, representatives in the House, sometimes maybe in the Senate, when you have journalists, when you have activists that are openly being hostile to Israel, for example. I mean, again, let's try to meet in the middle here. I hope you can understand why there's a concern when we're seeing, for example, and listen, 2 years ago, I went up to the Upper West Side of Manhattan and I stood in front of a rowdy crowd at Columbia University with a bunch of like protesters. I mean, these are people, Adam, and to be fair, I mean, hijacking libraries on college campuses. I mean, creating encampments to, be hostile to Jewish students. In fact, I mean, I have classmates from grad school that teach at NYU and John Jay and schools across the river Manhattan. I mean, and their only crime for walking on campus and getting harassed verbally or otherwise was just being Jewish. I mean, again, and we saw this play out in real time on college campuses all across this country. And when we're seeing nobody standing up for Jewish faculty members and Jewish students, when we're seeing students getting harassed by those, waving Palestinian flags and everything else. I mean, listen, I hope you can understand, like, that's a concern, man, especially, when we think about institutions of higher learning, it's supposed to be accepting of all dialogue and backgrounds. And that's not the case. I hope you saw it. I mean, listen, at my alma mater, Rutgers University in New Brunswick, I was horrified as an alumnus seeing, radical students and radical, as I call them in many instances, jihadists or jihadist sympathizers harassing people. Like, that's not a good look. I mean, in fairness.
Yeah, there's absolutely no place for hate or bigotry, any kind of violence, whatever way it may be. And, not diminishing the anti-Semitism that exists in urban areas or across the country. But there's also Islamophobia. There's also Asian hate. There's also, a precedent against Hispanics now, especially with rhetoric involving ICE and being illegal, ramping up against Hispanics. So a lot of different groups experience marginalization in this country, and it's important that we are aware of and address all of them, especially as elected officials in Congress. I think it's super important, the kind of language and the way we talk about these different groups, especially if they're one that is frequently marginalized, and give a lot of care and attention to those areas.
Interesting you brought up the term about Islamophobia. And obviously, that term's been thrown around certainly a lot, obviously, in the last few years, when it comes to how polarizing this issue has become when it comes to Israel, Palestine, and countries within that region of the world. But let me ask you this again. Maybe this is the academic in me. I tend to be very literal, and language matters. So obviously, if you've watched this show, I've been called every blankist, blankphobe under the sun, and I always just think that's lazy. Because, for example, again, I'm not accusing you of this, but when we hear these terms in our political dialogue, whether it's, I've been accused of Islamophobia, I've been accused of being transphobic, I've been accused of being xenophobic, I've been accused of being homophobic, or misogynist or a racist. And I mean, Adam, I think it's lazy, because when I think of phobias, I think of the definition. Again, I'm a literal person, so I think of a phobia to me is sort of an irrational or paralyzing fear of something, someone, an ideal, or a concept. And like, I'm not afraid or terrified of trans people. I don't care for them. I don't care for what I think is mental illness. I don't care for, them as any more than I care for Red Sox and Eagles fans. I mean, I don't think that's a phobia. I mean, I think that when people accuse me of being, again, I don't care about what June represents. It doesn't affect me. I'm Catholic, I don't care for what June represents for some people. It doesn't make me a homophobe or a transphobe. So I think that when we hear this word phobia, especially let's say about what's going on in Palestine, what's going on in the West Bank, and obviously the ongoing conflict with Israel, and what we're seeing with language that's being used, whether it's in higher education, pop culture, or anywhere, that I don't think it's Islamophobia. I just think that there's a specific resistance to maybe Islamic ideals. Like, is that maybe a meeting in the middle moment for us?
Yeah, phobia probably isn't the right word, as you kind of explored, but I think maybe a stereotype or a little bit of a bigotry might be best. It's like a Islam, stereotype, or we don't want to group. Just because we have had experience, especially you alluded to 9/11 in the tri-state area, where these terrorist attacks have been, perpetuated by a broad group of people, and you don't want to drill down that stereotype and that bias towards, people that had no, connection to those type of things. So it's just really important to realize that we're talking about millions and millions of people when we talk about these kind of groups and these religious groups. And there's all shades of gray. There's people that are extremists within that group, and there are people that are, peaceful and prayerful, like in any religion. So I think that that's important to understand, and we have to be really careful as journalists and public officials in terms of the language we use, and not weaponize or villainize, giant groups of people, which are too big statistically. They're going to have, bad people and good people within them. So it's important to draw the lines where they actually should be, and look out for civilians regardless of their religion or where they're born, because at the end of the day, that's one thing you can't control. we are walking a path from God that we're able to, live advanced Western life and be here right now and have this privileged conversation. But, it's a work of God. We could have been born anywhere in the world. And I just really think we need to get back to a baseline of humanity. And, see, there's a lot of places where, all these religions overlap, and become kind of a basic understanding. So focusing on that instead of our differences, I think is, there's a lot of commonality in terms of the way we want to live as Americans.
All right, fair enough. Switching gears here, I want to ask you, I know you've taken exception with the incumbent when it comes to the voting record. And one of the things that obviously the federal legislative branch, obviously, folks, again, not to do civics again, but, three branches of government, the legislative branch is in charge of how we spend money at the federal level and budgets and everything else. And I know you've taken some exceptions with the incumbent in the 5th Congressional District about his voting record on budgets. So let's sort of break this down for you. I mean, should you be elected to the House of Representatives representing the 5th Congressional District, what would you look at in the federal budget about either cutting, maybe reforming, maybe adding to or adding extra spending? I mean, let's break down, again, the economic platform of what you represent with your candidacy.
Yeah, so you alluded a little earlier to, how this, Trump Vance ticket that we are now under, the 24 ticket was supposed to be the peace ticket, the end of endless foreign wars, was a big part of, Trump's campaign for his second presidency. So I think that that is a key area, honestly, first on my priority list in terms of foreign policy and sending money overseas, whether it's for bailouts of Argentina or, different allies, or whether it's starting or perpetuating or being involved in some of this foreign conflict in the Middle East, or even out to Ukraine. I think we need to do what we can to establish peace and establish human rights in these areas, and then get out as quick as possible, because I don't think we have any business in militarizing some of these armies that are violating human rights across the Middle East and across the world. So I think we really need to take a hard look at, healthcare, not bombs, or, that kind of philosophy. And if we have money for all of this militarization and all of this damage that's being promulgated overseas, we have to have, money for basic safety nets and social services for people here on the ground, for tax-paying civilians. We have to build out public transit. We have to invest in our own infrastructure. We have to do more to release the cost burden from everyday people, working class, because right now people are not feeling the benefits. And, all of these wars feel so, distant from the struggles that people are experiencing just to, keep the lights on or put food on the table. So it's really important to get back in touch with I think the representatives need to get back in touch with the people on the ground of their district, because I think most representatives, including and beyond Gottheimer, have really lost touch with, the day-to-day challenges that people are experiencing. And I think our district is a prime example, and that's why I'm trying to get involved in this race.
Well, let me ask you this, because again, you talk about affordability, obviously there. I mean, I'm sort of reading between the lines there in terms of what you just mentioned with your narrative right now. And certainly, yes, I mean, I understand affordability is an issue right now. And I think there are just certain things that could be done at the federal level. Certainly, we saw last year's passage of the Big Beautiful Bill, right? So that legislation essentially worked to alleviate taxes on tips and overtime, and certainly to help seniors when it came to Social Security benefits and things of that nature. We haven't seen yet the data about how much more beneficial it's been during this tax season. I know plenty of people that have benefited from the legislation at the federal level. But again, man, we live in New Jersey, and I talk about it all the time. And, one party has controlled the legislature at the state level in Trenton for over 25 years. And it's not people like Fernando Uribe, conservatives like me, that are about small government, responsible spending. It's not people like me that have taxed us into oblivion and unaffordability in New Jersey. It's been one party. It's been one ideology to some extent, whether it's progressives or liberals or whatever. So, yes, we can talk about our representatives at the federal level, certainly. But here in New Jersey, though, Adam, again, we have the highest property taxes in the country. That's nothing to do. And I say this all the time to the vote blue, no matter who crowd that I run into when I do man on the street interviews, or when I do, when I host a show with other guests. The gas tax, at the federal level, the president has discussed about suspending it temporarily but the governor hasn't here in New Jersey. And the gas tax in New Jersey is the fourth highest in the country. The tolls on the Parkway and the New Jersey Turnpike went up again. That has nothing to do with Washington. That's the hands of one political party in New Jersey that is sinking the state into unaffordability. So I get what you're saying about the federal level. And I know it's easy for people to sort of pile on the president and Republicans because the Republicans control both chambers of Congress. But at the end of the day, I think we have to look at it from a state perspective here in New Jersey. I'm not saying you, I mean this generically. You can't blame Republicans for why New Jersey is in the state it's in financially. Republicans have not had a say whatsoever for 25 years. The budget has exploded bigger than Chris Christie's waistline. I mean, taxes go up. I mean, we spent $7 billion to coddle and accommodate illegals in New Jersey, man. Like, so part of me is like, I understand what you're saying, and there's a concern about the federal level, but again, here in New Jersey, Republicans or Democrats at the federal level really have nothing to do with why New Jersey's the financial, abyss that it's in, man.
Yeah, I don't point the finger at either party, specifically. I think that the entire system of, representation and democracy in this country has failed. You mentioned the state level, and I think it goes all the way up to a federal level. And I think the federal level is the most visible level, and it's how people kind of get their political morale about how they're being represented, or the culture or the vibe of American politics. And I think that it's that abysmal right now, and it's that disconnected from the everyday costs that people are experiencing. So whether it's the Democrats in New Jersey state government that are causing the most problems right now, or the Republicans in the federal level that are causing the biggest hardship, both parties have had their chance at driving, their chance at righting the ship, their chance at improving the lives and kitchen table families in this country and in New Jersey, and they both failed. They've both chosen to kick the can down the road and pander to corporations and foreign interests. So you cannot underestimate the fact that our democracy and our representation has been sold out to the nearest bidder. I really do believe that. So we can start getting better candidates in Congress that are going to commit to representing their constituents, their representatives, and like I said, commit to not owning stocks, commit to not owning crypto, really get some people that are honest and have real integrity in Congress. And I think that's the only way we're going to be able to improve anything for working people, because it's just going to keep getting worse and worse, like you said, regardless of who's in power.
No, listen, that's a fair point. But let me ask you this again, back to sort of spending and budget. I know you talked about not wanting to take taxpayer dollars and sort of export them overseas for conflicts or anything else.
Yes.
But domestically here in the homeland, I mean, it sounds like you, again, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but it sounds like you would want to reassess how we spend domestically here. Are we talking about reducing the size of government? Are we talking about reducing the size of certain departments? What would you prefer funding over others?
Yeah, I think we need to build out public transit. I think we need to move away from mindset of big oil and coal and natural gas. I think that everything that we do from here on out kind of has to be towards a Green New Deal type of philosophy, but we need to rework our entire economy towards sustainable energy. So a lot of this.
But I'll let you finish. I'm sorry, but we've seen this perpetuated. I mean, we see this, 3,000 miles away in California, we've seen arguably the damage of green policies and almost bankrupted the state. I mean, the idea of, compelling residents in a state to only buy electric cars or other policies. And let's be honest, if you don't have the infrastructure or the grid to power, I mean, look what's happened in California for years. Now, never mind the incompetence of the governor there for 8 years. I mean, God help us if this clown becomes president or wants to. But the point is that we've seen, I think, to some extent, the damage that green policies have done to states like California and others. And, again, I think that's the apprehension someone like me has when we hear about Green New Deal, because we've seen it's not been successful for the most part. So I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
No worries. No, I appreciate your comments. I agree with you that the infrastructure and everything needs to be built out in a real way. I think we can't go in door half open or 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I think when we make this sustainable transition to sustainable energy as a country, and we move to a new era of kind of realizing the climate emergency. And you mentioned some of what I read about getting on the same page of the United Nations, and that part is very much in reference to the climate emergency and realizing the volatile natural disasters that are coming down the pike to marginalized communities, regardless of if we accept it or not, and kind of moving with that urgency and that the essence of building up these different communities that are going to be suffering from these marginalized storms. And it can be done. It will be done. It's done. It's been done successfully in other countries in Europe and across the world. And the only reason that American innovation right now is kind of stalled is because of the intense lobbying and basically corruption of our representation in Congress and in government. So all of science, I think, is behind this new American innovation that's going to become inevitable, as soon as possible.
Let me ask you this, because I know you also talk about budgets and spending and obviously the way other countries do things. Again, I can be intellectually honest. I'm a conservative, but I also can look at some progressive policies and ideas and say, you know what, I can get on board with that, or I can understand the premise behind it. And I'll give you an example. I mean, I am someone that, when I hear about universal health care and that policy, like, I can be with that. Again, a healthier population is a more productive population in the workplace. You can make more money. You could also spend more time with your family. You can vacation. You're spending money. You're contributing to the economy. So again, a healthier population, no question, is a better population. However, again, as someone who volunteered at the VA years ago, I've seen firsthand the ineptitude and the inefficiency of government-run healthcare for our veterans, who I would argue deserve the best healthcare of anyone. But when we see countries around the world with smaller populations, and it's always, we always hear about these references. Well, they do it well here with a population of 10 million people or 15 or 20. We're talking about a country, though, Adam, that arguably, even the census data isn't, let's be honest, accurate. I mean, who knows how many more illegals are in the country because of the previous administration. We might be a population of 500 million people in the United States. I think it's hard to push for something like that to be efficient when we've seen that government cannot be efficient. But then comes sort of the basic question: how do we pay for this? And I get it that, whether it's someone like yourself that's sort of trying to reinvent Green Party politics, let's say Green Party 2.0, or someone that, I think it's fair to say that, you're a left of center, if not a progressive person, which is fine. Believe whatever you want. But realistically, how do we go about paying for universal healthcare? Now, I get it that government, unfortunately, has become, they've become whores. They've hoarded themselves out to big pharma. They've hoarded themselves out to the health insurance industry. I get it. They've hoarded themselves. I understand that. But realistically, how can we go about trying to create a system of universal healthcare when we see so much inefficiency at the federal level?
Yeah, first and foremost, how we're going to pay. We're going to, rework the tax code to tax corporations, these giant corporations that are built entirely off the backs of Americans and, profit off Americans every single day, that are getting away with paying nothing in taxes. Big companies like Amazon and beyond, and taxing the rich, but starting from the top down, 0.001%. These big oligarchs that are also getting away and have the wealth of small countries. Taxing both of those in these giant corporations and these oligarchs in a real way are going to contribute towards this universal healthcare plan. It's something that needs to be leveraged and obviously thought out well. But like I said, we have innovated so much in this country, and that is what makes us an economic leader on a world stage, has made us a world leader in democracy and freedom and free speech and electoral processes and all these areas where America has led the way and become the world leader that we have. So there's no doubt in my mind that we could accomplish something like universal healthcare. We're talking about a country that won the space race and has innovated in all these different ways. So just doing leveraging the existing healthcare systems in terms of leveraging these private companies like CVS or Aetna or United Healthcare, which are already pretty monopolized in structure, and they kind of have developed that way in our ultra-capitalist society. They can easily be leveraged, I think, into more public or subsidized entities. So there are ways definitely that we can do it.
Now, in fairness, again, and I'm no defender of billionaires whatsoever, but I mean, realistically, I mean, I've taken enough economics courses, man, and you're a smart guy too. But
Thank you.
when it comes to talking about revising the tax code, I mean, both parties have been guilty of dropping the ball on this for decades. I mean, both parties have occupied majorities in Congress, for example, in different intervals, and the tax code never gets changed.
No doubt.
And we see the talking points, let's say, by progressives or people that lean very left, like yourself, about well, corporations aren't paying their fair share. I mean, they're employing a hell of a lot of people. They're paying enormous taxes. Now, if it's not enough to let's say a level that appeases you, I mean, that's a different conversation. But again, Adam, when 10% of the American population pays little or no federal income tax, and the top, let's say, top 1% of wage earners in this country pay over 65% of the federal income tax bowl, right? I mean, that's still a lot. So I don't know if there's an easy paintbrush or one-step solution about correcting this, but I'm not saying you're guilty of this, but let's not pretend that, if you're making, if you're earning $60 million a year and the federal income tax code is around between 25 to 30%, I mean, that's a considerable chunk of change. Now, I get it. If you're making 60,000 and you're having your normal deductions, obviously it's not going to hit you the same, because if you're a millionaire, certainly. But at what point, if I'm making over $1 million a year in New Jersey, for example, I'd like to get there. But if I'm earning that, what do you think is fair to tax me then? Like if I'm earning $1 million between what I do with my business and my employment, and I'm earning over $1 million a year, what's a fair number for you to say, you know what, tax Fernando this?
$1 million, certainly isn't what it used to. So, I mean, I would keep that where it's at, around 25, 30% you mentioned, and ends up paying, on a federal level. But it's the earners. I'm thinking about them much, going truly from the top down. So it's almost like if you make 800,000, you make $1 million a year in Bergen County. That's basically like, that's a lot of the constituents. It's some that would consider that middle class. You have multiple bedrooms. You have
that's wealthy. To be fair, that's wealthy. I mean, if we're talking about 800,000, I mean, that's quite comfortable in a lot of parts of Bergen County, right? Especially in the district that we're talking about here. I mean, that's not even comfortable. I think that's wealthy.
Okay, but I think that those people are not the enemy of the state. That these, oligarchs that are making billions and have, Musks and Bezos and Zuckerbergs of the world that are truly hoarding the wealth. They're hoarding the wealth, and it's that big of a wealth divide and getting wider because of the hoarding of the wealth that's going on at the very, very top of our system. So I think that, someone that's making 800 or $1 million per year is not my priority in terms of, these are the people that are getting away. These are the people why we have homelessness or have, single mothers or babies not getting the medical care that they need. But I think that's because that's happening because there's such a hoarding of wealth happening at the top 0.0001%. And that's my main priority, as a congressman, to kind of shift that mindset of, these guys are contributing so much to this wealth disparity, and people are suffering because of it.
All right, understood. And you folks, if you just joined us live right now, it's 7:00 here on the East Coast. We'll be wrapping up shortly here with tonight's guest. He is NJCD5 candidate Adam Rueda. Join us live here on the show. Folks, again, like, comment, and share. It takes 5 seconds to show your support for fearless independent journalism that we bring you here every week on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. You're running in CD5. Obviously, anyone that looks at your social media, Adam, you've been very favorable, if not warm, to other, let's say, far-left Democrats running in New Jersey, obviously nearby in CD11. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we have a socialist there that got elected during a special election. Now she's going to have a voting record in the next few months. We'll see what happens in November when her challenger back from the special election, Joe Hathaway, will challenge her again. We'll see. Certainly, there are some concerns about someone like Uribe Mejia, who you have embraced, which is fine. Embrace whoever you want. But there are some concerns in this election cycle, right? I mean, obviously, you see someone like Uribe Mejia, who tries to portray herself as a soccer mom, and let's be honest, that's not the case. She lives pretty comfortably with wealth, but and then you see a little bit south in the 12th congressional district. I mean, you have a Democrat running in that primary, Dr. Adam Hamaway, and there's some serious concerns about someone like that who's running as a Democrat, but has some very notorious ties to some very, let's be honest, man, we got to call it, we have to call it out what it is, some really despicable people. And it seems like maybe in the 12th congressional district, maybe this is what Democrats want to embrace. Someone who, has been friendly with terrorists, or, other maybe anti-Western democracy type of, allegiances and things of that nature. So, like, are you concerned? I mean, obviously, I know you're, again, you have a profile picture with Uribe Mejia. That's fine. Take a picture with whoever you want. You've seen my social media. I mean, whatever. But the point is that, are you concerned that maybe someone like yourself who leans left and maybe progressive, that the Democrat Party or progressive politics are embracing people with, to be honest, with some really dangerous rhetoric, with some unrealistic rhetoric when it comes to economics and spending and things of that nature? Again, whether it's Uribe Mejia, whether it's Nellie Poe in the 9th congressional district, whether it's someone like LaMonica MacGyver in the 10th congressional district, who thinks it's okay to assault federal agents, or Dr. Adam Hamaway in the 12th congressional district. Are you concerned as someone who's progressive that maybe the Democrat Party is moving too far left and kind of embracing some dangerous people?
Yeah, so I can only speak so much for the Democratic leadership, which I'm obviously not a part of.
Sure.
I don't think that actually the Democratic leadership is moving that left. Guys like Schumer, or Jeffries, or Pelosi, or Gottheimer, that's the Democratic leadership. So I think that they're very firmly going to be moderate, almost right-leaning, and they are now. But there is a faction, and a growing faction, of Democrats that are, trending the opposite way of more progressive, towards the way of Zohran Mamdani, or Milot Kiros, who's running for Congress in Denver 1. I think is a really strong candidate. Kat Abigazale had a great run in IL 9. So I think that there's a faction of Democrats that's definitely headed that way. I don't think it's a bad thing. Anna Lilia, I think, is going to be really strong on human rights and, standing up for against ICE. I think that number one issue in New Jersey, North Jersey right now, from canvassing and working as a candidate for the past couple months, and from meeting with Anna Lilia as well, is absolutely people don't want ICE in their communities. They don't want to have fear of ICE in their communities. They don't want to be running home from bus stops or from school, and they don't want for-profit detention centers being built.
Well, I'll let you finish, but I mean, but again, it kind of goes back to earlier in our conversation. Then
Dr. Adam Hamaway, I think, is a great candidate. He was a doctor in Gaza. He's someone that experiences, has experienced the cost of war like no one else, and he's literally someone that is a surgeon that has reconnected limbs that have been blown off by bombs on the ground as recently as, a couple of years ago. So I think that someone like that is absolutely a huge upgrade from whoever is in that seat now. Someone that is going to know the cost of war and,
Well, and I'll let you finish, but to be fair, I mean, do any of his ties or friendships or acquaintances, isn't that fair game to bring up during this primary season, in terms of not even denouncing some really notorious people in his past? I mean, is that not a concern though too?
Yeah, I'm not telling you not to bring that up. From what that was brought to my attention from comments on Instagram, and that's why I'd love to keep the dialogue open, have comments, and messages come through, because people, have all kinds of sleuths and people that send different opinions to me that I consider.
Sure.
But it seems like it was a while ago from what I read on that issue regarding Hamaway. It was in '95. He was a translator, and it seems like he was pretty transparent about his connection there, that it wasn't anything more than that. It was a working relationship. But I would need to get the more details if you're saying there are some.
Sure. And to your point before about, ICE in the communities, again, it goes back to our conversation earlier in the evening though, man. I mean, again, we had 4 years of an administration of a guy who basically was asleep for 4 years, and you had an incompetent vice president, you had a wide open border. I mean, Adam, I understand what you're saying about not trying to not stoke fear in communities, but with that much of an influx and an import of illegal immigration into this country, I mean, how do you want ICE to do its job in New Jersey when the previous governor and this governor doesn't want to let ICE do their job, whether it's going to jails, removing dangerous illegals, criminal illegals in New Jersey? I'm not saying, listen, I'm not saying that every illegal in New Jersey is dangerous, but if they're here illegally, like, how do you want ICE to do their jobs? I mean, I'm trying to come up with a solution here. Again, I understand what you're saying about the fear in communities and parents, and maybe they don't want to take their kids to school. But again, Adam, if you're here illegally, ICE has to be able to do its job. So again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, bro. But again, then how do we fix this then? Because again, if the job is to get rid of illegals, and we saw the wide open border for 4 years, where, let's be honest, I think that number is conservative. I think it's more than 10 million. It could be 20 or more. So how do you want ICE to do its job if they're not going to be in the community and they're not removing illegals?
Yeah, I hear you, and it's a complex, nuanced issue, and we're kind of in a catch-22 with policy kind of swinging as a pendulum does from one side to the other so quickly. People are so quick to label these people illegal immigrants, but you mentioned that Biden and Harris administration had open border policy for 4 years. So people may have come over as legal, Biden, Harris immigrants, and now the pendulum has swung all the way back to, illegal, and then just all these more serious guidelines that, weren't part of the deal when they came here under the Biden Harris administration. So I just think that the immigration community and anyone that has been an immigrant recently has really suffered from this kind of pendulum policy. And I don't think Democrats should be all the way where they are in terms of, immigrant policy either. And, I wasn't for open immigration when Kamala was running. So I hear you on that sense. But at the end of the day, this is the wealthiest country in the world. We have a lot of freedom, and we have to maintain it. And that should extend to anyone that lives here. Anyone that lives here should have a baseline of dignity and human rights that is upheld by our government or by any law enforcement that's dealing with them. And I think that's not being held at this point. I think that's contributing to the fear in communities and the fact that it's people's number one issue. And you mentioned things about affordability and housing, and there's a lot of issues to focus on. But I'm surprised to see that people's number one issue is a human rights, community-focused issue that I've seen in Bergen, Passaic, and Sussex County. So I think that a politician like an Anna Lilia, a Mejia, or a Dr. Adam Hamwi is really cognizant and aware of that. And that shows, to me, signals a connection to their constituents and the people that they're supposed to be representing. So that's why I kind of support both of those guys.
Okay. I mean, again, it's going to be a very interesting primary tomorrow with the results. Obviously, the rest of the year, midterms tend to favor, obviously, the opposing party that's in the White House or the majorities in Congress. We'll find out. Obviously, you're running under a different platform, certainly, so it doesn't apply to you in the traditional sense in terms of primary. You're running towards the general in November. But before I let you go, again, I really want to thank you for your time tonight. I think it's been a great conversation for over an hour here that we've been able to talk about your platform, what you stand on, certainly what you'd like to see be done at the federal level. So I want to give you, again, this opportunity. I want to thank you again for your belief in my brand of journalism, coming on, having conversations. And, we can disagree without being disagreeable. We can agree without screaming and hollering and being chuma, and, that chumeria that exists right within our community. So obviously it's good to avoid that. But again, I want to give you an opportunity here. Any URLs, social media links, contact information about your campaign. And lastly, I'll give you the last word here tonight on Real Talk.
Yeah, appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me on. This kind of journalism of third party and independent candidates, I think, is the future. As some of these channels have become so poisoned with bias and have become so plugged into our political parties in this country that they're spinning kind of almost a completely fictional narrative at this point. So it's going to come down to independent journalists to kind of shine the light on real candidates, third-party candidates, people that are thinking outside the box in terms of representing people. And I think that's going to be our way forward in terms of, installing a better democracy and a better representation for everyone, regardless of where you're sitting or what color you normally wear or who you usually vote for. So that's number one thing. Check out my pages on Instagram. Rep Rueda is my official campaign page for New Jersey 5. And my new political party that is starting up. We're blessed to have 6,000 people on Instagram. Green Party 2.0. Post all kinds of current events, different talking points, different journalists from all over the country talking about all the important issues that I think Congress and your representative should have on the front of mind and be discussing. So feel free to stay in touch with me on there. Message me, comment. Feel free to participate in any of my posts. And I'm aiming to be a super accessible representative, even when I'm in office. I want to, have a lot of town halls be super accessible to my constituents. I think that should be the number one focus of anyone that's elected as a public servant for this position. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the freedom to speak my views and, have some dialogue with a smart journalist like yourself.
Well, that's really kind of you, bro. I appreciate that. That's very kind. Thank you. Again, folks, he's Adam Rueda, running in the 5th Congressional District, coming up here later on this November. Adam, I want to wish you the best of luck in your campaign. Certainly, I appreciate coming on. Thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Enjoy, obviously, the rest of the summer. I'm sure you'll be knocking on doors,
Right,
canvassing, phone banking, and I'll be in touch with you. Obviously, I'll send you some links to share about tonight's show. I appreciate your time tonight, and thanks again for your great, opinions and hear about Jersey First TV, about my brand of journalism, and again, we'll talk to you again soon here on Real Talk via the Jersey First Television Network. Have a great night, bro. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
All right. Very good, man. Stay well. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Take it easy. Folks, good stuff there with New Jersey's 5th Congressional District candidate, Adam Rueda, here tonight on the show. Again, like, comment, and share. Some nice traffic, some nice numbers here. Are you even surprised? Right? With this brand of fearless independent journalism. That's what we bring every week here, folks, on Jersey First. We appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing here on the broadcast. Again, like, comment, and share. I can't say it enough. Lots to unpack here tonight. And you know what time it is? It's time for final thoughts. And yes, folks, I talk about it all the time. There is no shortage of bad actors in New Jersey on a plethora of different platforms. Whether it be in higher education, we have soy boys like Joe Amaditis from the Center of Cooperative Media over there at Woke State University in Montclair. Where we have useless journalists like Alan Steinberg and Tom Moran, or Matt Friedman, or Chucky, Charles Style, more on Chucky later, or other useless journalists like Max Pizarro, or other useless women like Jay Lassiter, Patricia Campos Medina, Nettie Morsi, Lauren Albrecht, Caleb Burrell, or downright like incompetent and inefficient elected officials like Assemblyman Ravi Bala, Assemblywoman Katie Brennan, Councilman Joe Brooks in Jersey City, Councilman Phil Cohen and Joe Quintero in Hoboken. Okay. Overpaid and, apple picking, paper pushing, do nothing government employees like Maria Rodriguez and others with awful takes on social media. But folks, when I think about bad takes, it requires someone like the generational talent to tell you the truth about what's going on in today's political climate. And a special thank you to the Hudson County Chronicles last week for publishing my op-ed, which they do regularly, as well as other news sites, such as the Hudson County View and the Jersey, and the Jersey Times. I'm going to read you verbatim about what I wrote about what happened last week on Memorial Day. But folks, it was embarrassing to see members of Congress, such as U.S. Senator Andy Kim, who, by the way, this guy never will waste an opportunity for a photo op. Okay, we all learned that back in 2021. He's not going to miss one 5 years later. But the bullshit excused by people like Andy Kim, thinking that we're stupid. No, Andy, yeah, sure, you went to 3 Memorial Day events during the morning. Why didn't you publish them? Why was there any footprint on social media? But no, instead, on Memorial Day, when we should be honoring soldiers that have given the ultimate sacrifice for this country, okay? And don't confuse it with Veterans Day. We honor veterans on Veterans Day. Veterans Day really is every day. But on Memorial Day, it's not about barbecues. It's not about the long weekend. If you remember Kamala Harris and that useless woman who was our vice president for 4 years, God help us. And the idea that any of you thought voting for her to be president was a good idea, I'd revoke the right to vote for you for the rest of your life. But that's another conversation. It's not some long weekend. It's not about barbecues and day drinking. It's about honoring those that have given the most for our country, folks, whether it starts with the American Revolution, to the Civil War, to the present day. But instead of honoring soldiers and those who have given the sacrifice for our country, no, people like U.S. Senator Andy Kim and representatives like LaMonica MacGyver and Nellie Poe and others want a virtue signal. And when Andy Kim decides to side with professional paid agitators and protesters and he gets pepper sprayed, did I care? Folks, I watched that video of Andy Kim getting water sprayed on his eyes after the pepper spray. I think I watched it like 5 times. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Do I care that Andy Kim got pepper sprayed? No, I don't care. Because what you were about was making it about yourself and not what Memorial Day is. When you, in your former capacity as a member of the House of Representatives, and even during your years working for the Obama administration, which, by the way, your boss at the time deported more people than anybody in American history. But during the 4 years of Joe Biden as president, and one of the most incompetent administration in my adult life. And that's saying something because I lived through the 8 years of Barack Obama. Okay? Where there was a wide open border and not a peep out of Andy Kim, who was then a representative in the House in the 3rd Congressional District. Not a peep out of people like Nellie Poe and LaMonica MacGyver, or Bill Pascrell. And even for someone like Rob Menendez, who I like Rob personally. We've gone out to dinner. We've had drinks. He's a good guy. He rolls up his sleeves and he does the work in the 8th Congressional District. And tomorrow on primary day, he's going to win in a romp. There's no question about that. That's not what I'm questioning here. But why the virtue signaling? Why this idea of having to be hostile and antagonistic with federal agents? We saw that last year, right, with LaMonica MacGyver last May in front of Delaney Hall, in front of that detention center. And again, a shout out to Rob Menendez, because I don't know if he's doing CrossFit. I don't know if he's doing jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai or, Taekwondo, whatever. That is a deceptively strong young man to be able to take LaMonica MacGyver and pull that behemoth away when she's assaulting federal agents, folks, okay? That is a monumental Herculean feat by Rob Menendez to pull that behemoth off of federal agents. But what we saw last Monday and what we've seen for the duration of last week were out of town professional paid protesters and agitators trying to pick a fight with federal agents who are just simply doing their job and trying to remove dangerous illegals from this country. And isn't it funny for someone like Andy Kim, who, by the way, worked in the Obama administration, who, by the way, when it first opened, yes, it was a rehab and substance abuse center. But since 2011, again, folks, reminder, Donald Trump wasn't president in 2011. You know who was? Barack Hussein Obama. And since 2011, Delaney Hall has been used to house illegal immigrants, either awaiting deportation or awaiting immigration court. Not a peep out of Andy Kim when Barack Obama deported the most amount of illegals in the history of the United States. More than Bill Clinton, more than George W. Bush, and more than both Trump presidencies and administrations. Okay? Not a peep out of Andy Kim. But instead of worrying about Memorial Day, instead of worrying about those that have made the sacrifice, no, Andy Kim had to make it about Andy Kim. And he got pepper sprayed, and good for his ass, as well as everybody else, for being antagonistic and being confrontational with federal agents. In what world does that compute that you think being confrontational with federal agents is a good idea. Andy Kim should be ashamed of himself. He doesn't have any shame to begin with, let's be honest. All the guy cares about is a photo op. But we saw that last week with the virtue signaling at Delaney Hall. And for the duration of last week, we've seen dozens of paid protesters who, by the way, the Department of Homeland Security today announced that arrests were made. And what do you know? The majority, if not entirely, all of the arrestees at Delaney Hall were out of state, as far out west as Portland, Oregon, members of Antifa. There's been very little New Jersey residents being arrested at Delaney Hall, but they're all out of town protesters. Where have we seen that before? George Soros, anyone? All these left-wing nonprofits? Yeah, folks, that's what we saw at Delaney Hall, attempting to assault federal agents. So much so that the governor had to call in the New Jersey State Police to help federal agents. Well, gee, I don't know. Maybe if you had called them in to begin with, this wouldn't have been happening, and we wouldn't have seen the escalation we saw last week. But not a peep out of Andy Kim. And more so, what's politically myopic, and we all know, folks, when it comes to political myopia, yes, folks, we think about Uncle Dave. Yes, Slim over here, el flaquito este. Interesting. He made it out of his house to do some actual work. And he went to Delaney Hall last week. Interesting. Now, again, folks, you'll have to spare me with the laughter because I'm laughing here of just the language levied at Uncle Dave because Dave's fucking useless. Uncle Dave is fucking useless. That's what he is. Because for years, when Barack Obama was deporting more illegals than any other president in American history, not a peep out of Uncle Dave. He was too busy stuffing his face with another hot dog or in the food court at the Gateway Center when he was working for NJPBS. Okay? Or walking down to the first floor and see what's in the food court. Okay, not a peep out of Uncle Dave, right? Not a peep out of the virtue signaling he continues to do on behalf of illegals when he interviews like social justice reporters on his little bullshit Mickey Mouse show that nobody watches. Okay? As the guy now is attempting to be a podcaster. Yeah, good luck with that, Dave. I see your shitty numbers. You're not fooling anybody. And for someone that used to love shitting on podcasters like Fernando Uribe, el mundo da mucha vuelta, doesn't it, Slim? And now you're trying to be a podcaster. Well, here's the reality for Uncle Dave. You suck at podcasting. Nobody watches you. And today, as we celebrate 6 years on the air, people are still watching me. But let's watch Uncle Dave leave his house and be productive, or attempt to be productive. Check this out.
Outside Delaney Hall, the privately run immigration detention center on Doremus Avenue in Newark, is rank. Waste processing plants and other industrial uses nearby make this an unpleasant place even by New Jersey standards.
What do you want it to be, David? At a Marriott? Like, do you want people, do you want people to be housed in a Marriott or a Hampton Inn? Like, folks, this is the level of retard that Uncle Dave, he's consistently shown. This is not new about Uncle Dave. We've known que David Cruz ha sido un come mierda for years, longer than I've been alive. Okay? And Uncle Dave, at the tender age of 84, and he's been working in journalism for, I don't know, like 60 years, I think, maybe? 70 years? Who knows? I don't know. But no one should be surprised, folks, by the level of stupidity that's conveyed by Uncle Dave in what he calls reporting. But let's continue.
Inside Delaney, detainees somehow have it worse. Reports of rancid food, lack of medical care, abusive
By the way, David, the same food that's served at Delaney Hall is the same food in the contract that's served at MetLife Stadium. Now, never mind the fact that MetLife Stadium is a shithole anyway. No one's disputing that. Okay? It's just a modern-looking penitentiary out on Route 3 there in East Rutherford. But the same contract that's used for service provider to provide food at that shithole known as MetLife Stadium is the same company that's used at Delaney Hall. So where's the issue? Didn't you know that? Or is doing research too much work for you? Yo sé que tú eres un tú eres un vago, yo sé. I know working for you, I know inherently, no te nace. We know. It's nothing new here. But let's continue.
Staff and all manner of human and civil rights violations.
I saw them throw him in the van. Two big-ass men were pulling him and shoving him into the van.
They say they're on a hunger strike. Homeland Security says
Falling asleep here.
there is no hunger strike. The governor showed up here on Memorial Day trying to get in, got turned away because she lacked jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's a federal facility. No shit, David. I mean, again, this isn't, oh God. I mean, folks, when you do the bare minimum, it shows in the bare minimum of your journalism. But let's continue.
Then got an earful from a detainee's family member for her efforts.
In there. They're starving. And it took you 4 days. You're out there promoting the world.
This isn't a Marriott. Esa campesina que está ahí crying about her husband or whatever. Like, this isn't a Marriott. This isn't a Hampton Inn. Okay, folks? This isn't a Wyndham or something. Like, it's jail. Like, sorry. And if you're here illegally, like, you're going to get deported. Okay? Now, I'm not sure if that wife is illegal or anything. And God knows if there's anchor babies involved. Who knows? But folks, like, again, the level of virtue signaling here is sickening.
Cop going to this bar, taking these shots. What about these people here? What about these people here? Shame on you that it took you 4 days.
We've been working together on this.
4 days. They specifically asked for you.
I want to say that
You've probably also seen where Senator Andy Kim caught some errant pepper spray in the face.
That was the best part of the day. Like having to, flood his eyes with water. That was amazing. I could watch this over and over again. Really. And everybody else that got pepper sprayed. Like, do you think being confrontational with federal agents is a good thing? Like, ¿quién piensa que eso va a traer un buen resultado? Really? Like, this is a level of stupidity and retardation we're dealing with here, folks. The government, Uncle Dave, calls that out.
After trying to tamp down tensions here. In the 48 hours since, the crowd here has swelled and abated in size.
This is good.
Joining families of detainees are the advocates, activists, and agitators, followed closely by press and politicians a week before a primary.
Pepper spray in the face. What have you seen here? What has been the behavior of the people in the masks and helmets here?
I mean, look, first of all, in New Jersey, you're not supposed to be wearing masks. Governor Schultz said that. They obviously don't care about the law here. I mean, they just, spurn the law. But they have been...
For a guy with a Harvard law degree, it's interesting for someone like Musab, who's a jerk off too. Let's be honest. I don't care for this jerk off whatsoever. But come on, Musab, you're smarter than this. Federal law, again, excuse the pun, Trump state law. Isn't that what we've always heard, right? When it comes to this. So to see Musab, of course, he has all day to campaign. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't work. Okay, so he could afford a virtue signal there with Uncle Dave.
Extremely aggressive. Over and over again, protesters who have been here have been completely peaceful. No one here has any weapons. No one has any weapons. The people in the ICE officers, they have guns. They have these pepper guns. They have...
Well, what do you want them to have, you retard? I mean, you want them to have, like, I don't know, like pens and, I don't know, what do you want them to do? Like swat people away with their hands? They're federal agents. They're going to be equipped with law enforcement gear. I mean, folks, it never ceases to amaze me when we think about people with paper degrees and we think about how the hell did this guy even get through law school, much less Harvard for that sense. It kind of makes you wonder.
Batons, they have, they're coming at us as hard as possible, constantly, aggressively, for no good reason.
No, of course not, because there aren't agitators there looking to pick fights with federal agents. Folks, again, it's like one come mierda talking to another come mierda. Like Uncle Dave and Musab Ali deserve each other because they're the same level of retard. But let's continue.
There's no reason for them to ever show this sort of aggression, but they are constantly showing aggression. They're constantly causing chaos. It's the same thing they cause in our streets, David. These are not people that are here for peace. They're people that...
Yeah, look at Dave nodding como estúpido. Porque eso que David Cruz es estúpido. Like, there's no other way to say it. And I'm not going to be nice about it. You know what? Real Talk celebrates 6 years. I'm going to keep holding it for another 6 years. I'm going to call it out for what it is. I'm too old to have a filter, folks. Si alguien es estúpido, un estúpido. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to play nice. I'm not going to play nice with people that don't like me. That's just the truth. Let's continue.
They're here to cause chaos.
As we speak, the standoff continues. On one side, ICE officers, some just recently deputized and looking like this was not what they signed up for.
Can I step in front?
On the other side, demonstrators, some looking to provoke.
We don't want ICE in our cities.
Some
You went for ICE?
Piggy, piggy. We don't want you in our city.
And the press, milling about mostly until something grabs their attention.
You gotta love like the dramatic music. Que me de comer mierda, David. Really, honestly, as if I don't dislike you enough, like bro, like you give me every reason more to dislike you. Porque qué insufferable, qué insoportable tú eres como un come mierda. En serio, like qué come mierda tú eres.
You never know what to expect when you're here. You know, we came Sunday night. Excuse me, this is Congressman Menendez. I'm here to conduct an unannounced oversight visit. Can you please come out? Before we finally got in, when we got into detention, we're an ankle monitor.
We actually just got a third letter that we're going to be releasing later today, where they tell us that they are going to continue the strike. They're not giving up until their demands are met, and that they know we're
I mean, some of the ladies there outside protesting, they could benefit from a hunger strike for a few weeks, I think.
outside, that we're here, that they can hear us, and that they feel the solidarity, and that is giving them strength to keep the strike going.
The Department of Justice says there's no hunger strike going in there.
We know, yeah, we read their statement. It's a
Oh yeah, because we all know it's completely honest, right? Like make a decision, because apparently some of these protesters, como esta campesina right here, right, is saying, oh, you know, we're getting phone calls from detainees. Oh, wait a minute. So you can make phone calls to your family members, but you can't make a phone call to your lawyer? Like make it make sense. Like pick a story and stick to it. Deja de comer mierda, deja the bullshit, because no one's buying it. I'm not buying it either. But let's continue.
complete lie. We have the letter signed by 300 people who are doing the strike. We are in communication with them. We know that there is a strike happening. So we should not believe anything that DHS has to say.
So there was confrontations
Yes.
earlier today as well. But right now, ICE is, these guys here are being super nice. Did somebody give them a message about not beating up protesters and press?
I wish. I wish. I honestly, I would not trust any of their words or actions. I also know that they show the most force once they see that we're waning down, that they're quote unquote, that they're, that we're being passive, whatever that may mean to them.
You're not being passive when you're trying to block the entry and the exit of federal agents and you're banging on vehicles. Folks, a simple Google search will tell you that this woman's full of shit. But it takes a guy that's full of shit to talk to a woman that's full of shit. That's, folks, that is the world of David Cruz.
And so honestly, if they are being nice, it's probably just a tactic so that we can see that they're non-threatening, and they'll just wait for the right moment to use that force.
The hot midday sun on Tuesday is making it hard to breathe deeply, much less chant out here. With no real motion at the gate, the assembled look around for signs of anything, eventually finding ways to provoke something.
Oh, you mean patriotic Americans that are supporting ICE and federal agents and supporting law enforcement? Folks, this is David Cruz, who I bet you, I'm not even bet you, I can Google it, that during the summer of 2020, when we were supposedly people were having black squares as their profile picture and glamorizing a career criminal, right? And looting and vandalizing and damaging both public and private property, right? Not a peep from David Cruz, right? About supporting the police or anything like that. No. David Cruz, in between his fourth and fifth hot dog he's stuffing down his throat. No, of course. He was just as easy part of all that stupidez about abolish the police and, vilifying law enforcement. Folks, that's someone like David Cruz. So God forbid people decide to stand up for law enforcement. See, that's foreign for someone like David Cruz. I mean, critical thinking is foreign para este estúpido anyway. Pero the idea that there could be, I don't know, Americans, citizens or residents that, for example, want to support law enforcement. I know that's a really foreign concept for David Cruz because, again, and I get it, when you're 84 years old, the brain doesn't work as well anymore, David. But let's continue.
I support the Department of Homeland Security and to get the message.
What do you know about the conditions inside?
What I do know is some of those people in there hiked through the Darien jungle. Took
What
about
do you
a
know
week.
about the conditions inside, though?
He doesn't know what he's
I'm not talking to you.
They're about the same as in the Darien jungle, maybe a little better.
So what do you know about the Lady Hall?
I know that it's contracted by the federal government, which has standards for contracting, and it's owned by I don't know, like a
Contract since 2011 when it first started under the Obama administration. Did David Cruz have an objection to that in 2011 or the years afterwards? Of course not. That would require Uncle Dave, acuérdate, to have that 4-syllable word. Yeah, he struggles. He struggles with a lot of words. Porque es un estúpido. Integrity. Let's continue with Uncle Dave.
P1000.
There's no tear gas there.
Here we go. A little bit better now in a minute. Look at these professional agitators. Like, where are they getting it from?
What happened?
She want to get fucked, man.
Come on, bro. Speak.
No.
Hey, man, don't touch my shit. I'm not touching your shit.
No, you guys stay the fuck out my space.
I am right here. You're in my space, actually.
Well, to be honest, I mean, Uncle Dave occupies a lot of space porque tú sabes que es tan gordo que he probably takes up a few feet. So I understand why the guy's a little, like uncomfortable. Like if I had someone looking like David Cruz that weighs 800 pounds, I mean, I'd be concerned about that too. Like, I mean, God forbid, it's a hot day. So if David Cruz decides to fall on you, te jodiste. Because once that's dead weight on you, ya, te jodiste. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure he's pretty concerned about that as well. So
The standoff, such as it is taking place down the street right now. On the one side, you have press and demonstrators yelling at what is a phalanx of ICE officers protecting, evidently, the driveways.
yeah, because they have to find a way to get in and out, you moron. That's their job, to transport inmates in and out of the building for deportation. But again, folks, and I think you get the picture here. I don't have to sort of like continue on with this, but you get the picture about the level of dishonesty and how disingenuous David Cruz is. And I get it. We're all going to get there, God willing, if I stay healthy. I get it. When I get to be hopefully 84 years old like Uncle Dave, I get it. My brain ain't going to work that great either. But folks, don't be fooled by this bullshit brand of reporting. For years, Uncle Dave could have talked about Delaney Hall. He just chose not to. It's just convenient for him now. And that's why you can never trust Uncle Dave. I never have, and I never will. Speaking of another 80-something-year-old person, let's talk about 89-year-old Charles Style, who, of course, we all know has garbage editorials, right? I'm not going to read you the editorial. You can look it for yourself. Now, again, unfortunately, it's on a paywall because who would really pay for the garbage on NorthJersey.com via the Bergen Record? But instead of calling out bad behavior by Andy Kim, no, Uncle Chucky thinks that Andy Kim is defending democracy. No, folks, he's not doing that. He's trying to subvert democracy. He's trying to make sure that we coddle illegals and we worry more about illegals on Memorial Day than we do about dead soldiers. That's the truth. Now Chucky doesn't want to say that to you because that would require Chucky, como Uncle Dave, to have, wait for it, that 4-syllable word he struggles with, integrity. Folks, don't take my word for it. Read the editorial. It's absolute garbage. But when we think about garbage journalism, folks, we can always rely on 89-year-old Charles Style. And whoever told Charles that he's photogenic, oye, le mentido, porque este es más feo con gana. Pero, what else is new? And those are my final thoughts. Folks, a special comment. Let's get serious for a minute. Okay, enough of dealing and talking about basura como David Cruz in Charlestown. Eso basura, eso no vale la pena, per se. Let's talk about something really important. And that June is really Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Okay, that's something I can celebrate in June for sure. Folks, last week, we learned of the passing of nightlife icon David Quisenberg, affectionately known as DQ to so many people that came into contact with him for over 20 years. Now, I had the privilege of knowing David since 2010, when I made my rounds down the Jersey Shore, in Hoboken, and other places. And David was an incredible human being. Never mind being a great bartender, had the best pours, used to hook you up at the bar, you know, throw you a free shot here and there, a free round here and there. But more importantly, David Quisenberg was an incredible human being. And little did we know of the struggles that he was dealing with. And my heart goes out to his family, to his friends, to his loved ones, to everyone that cared about David. And last week we saw at Bar A in Belmar, New Jersey, over 2,000 people flooded Bar A to honor the memory of David Quisenberg. A great guy who had a lot going for him. But folks, we just sometimes never know about the struggles that everyone can be going through. And to everyone struggling with their mental health, to anyone struggling with their depression, we've all been there. We've all been down in the dumps. We've all been depressed. We've all had really dark periods in our lives. Understand that you are loved. Understand that you are wanted. Your life means something. And it broke my heart to hear of David's passing because, again, of struggling with mental health. And for men all across this country, we're taught at a very young age, you know what? Be strong. Don't show emotion. Don't show weakness. Suck it up. Tough it up. No, we're humans like anyone else. And we struggle. And apparently David's struggles are too much. And my heart goes out to his family. I knew David personally. He was a wonderful human being. And when we hear about men's mental health and the struggles that we hear with men's mental health, folks, we also learned about the passing of New Jersey Devils legend Claude Lemieux, who also at the age of 60 took his own life. Now, I had the privilege of seeing Claude Lemieux be the MVP of the Stanley Cup Finals in 1995 when the Devils won their first Stanley Cup, when they swept the Detroit Red Wings. And I remember watching that at the Brendan Byrne Arena and what would go on to become, you know, the Continental Airlines Arena, the Eyes Outside, whatever. Folks, Claude Lemieux was an integral part in New Jersey Devils history. But he too was struggling with mental health. And at the tender age of 60, Claude Lemieux took his life. It's a tragic circumstance. And my heart and feelings go out to the family of Claude Lemieux, an iconic New Jersey Devil, an iconic hockey player who unfortunately was never voted into the Hall of Fame. But folks, mental health is real. Men's mental health matters. Please, during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, in the month of June, talk to someone, talk to a loved one, talk to friends, talk to a professional. Your life matters. Your life is worth living. People love you. Seek the help that you need. Stay here with us. And for some, I know it's too much and it's too much of a burden. No, it's not. Stay strong. Talk to someone. Get an outlet. Go. There's plenty of resources. Trust me, your life is worth living. And on behalf of the staff here at Jersey First TV, my heart goes out to the families of David Quisenberg and Claude Lemieux, again, who represent a very real struggle in today's political and social climate. Men's mental health matters now more than ever. Your life matters, folks. To the guys out there struggling, stay strong. People love you. There are resources for you. Your life is worth living. Let's make sure we support all our men, not just during the month of June, during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but every day of the year. And also, folks, during a special comment tonight, I want to just, sometimes people talk about Maybe you should meet your heroes. Well, I did. And I had a privilege of meeting Chaz Palminteri, the iconic actor from The Bronx Tale, from his appearances on Modern Family, the Emmy Award-winning sitcom on ABC. And he just produced a new wine brand. And I had the privilege of being at Gioni's Wine and Liquor in West New York, right on Riverwalk Place. I had the privilege of meeting Chaz Palminteri, a wonderful actor, a wonderful human, just a wonderful American. And obviously a wonderful wine manufacturer, for that matter, because we had a free tasting there at Gioni Wine and Liquor in West New York. What a privilege it is to meet Chaz Palminteri. May he live many more years of happiness. He's brought so much happiness to us through his acting, through his entertainment, through his entrepreneurship, through his philanthropy. We here at Jersey First TV, we love you, Chaz Palminteri. Yeah, I know sometimes people are worried about meeting their heroes. I wasn't, and I'm so proud to have met mine and so privileged to have met my hero, Chaz Palminteri. Folks, once again, thank you for the great traffic in the month of May. Over 77,000 views and counting here on Real Talk. Real traffic with real conversations, because it's Real Talk, folks, not the Mickey Mouse journalism, not the Mickey Mouse podcasts with Mickey Mouse journalists. No. It's basura. Here, folks. This is standard. This is a generational talent. Know the difference. We're not the same. So thank you to my family, friends, to everyone that tunes in and shares the replays and watches live every week here on Jersey First TV. Thank you for another great month of traffic here in 2026. Once again, folks, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and X, also subscribe to us on YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe to us on Spotify or SoundCloud. Check out all the great content we bring you on Jersey First TV. Folks, I can't say it enough. If it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's Real Talk here, celebrating 6 years. Coming to you live every Monday since June 1st, 2020. And from here on in, to the haters, to those that try to cancel me, to those who hate me, folks, keep doing what you're doing, because I'm still here. I'm still raising hell. I'm still getting traffic. Again, folks, the most handsome face that runs the place. It's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid. It's Real Talk here on the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe, saying so long. Let's go, Knicks. Let's party like it's 1999. The Knicks are back in the NBA Finals for the first time in 27 years. And the finals begin this Wednesday in San Antonio. Knicks in 6. You heard it right here, folks. Let's go, Knicks. Again, please party responsibly, and we'll see you next Monday here for the best hour plus of analysis and commentary, everything going on in politics and much more. Folks, it's Real Talk here on Jersey First TV. Have a great week, folks. Let's go, Knicks. Stay classy, everyone.